Hello there, today I am here to bring you the first half of my January reading. I feel like I have to apologise at the moment because I feel like my channel is very kind of wrap up heavy, but it's because of fitting in the Christmas videos as well. Now I'm only doing one video a week. That's just the way it's working out this month, and my next video I suspect will probably be another wrap up. So I mean, it's good for the people who enjoy wrap ups, but if you're thinking goodness she's doing a lot of wrap ups at the moment, that is why. We will be back to regular scheduling come January, I'm sure. I would like to do a catch-up video for certain, but anyway, to fit it into this month, I am going to film the first half of my January wrap-up. If you're fed up of wrap-ups, I understand, you can leave, it's fine. I haven't admittedly read that much this half of the month. I've kind of been not in the zone for reading, and I've also not been wanting to force myself. I'm not going to go into detail. I'm going to do that annoying thing where I'm vague about this, but I had probably the worst start to the year that I've ever had. Yeah, it wasn't nice, and that's kind of impacted my reading. I don't think I picked up a book until about the 4th of January, and even then I kind of wasn't in the headspace to actually take in what it was saying, but what I was reading at this awful time was Pages & Co, Tilly and the Book Wanderers by Anna James. Now, if you watch a lot of booktubers, you will have heard plenty about this book. This is by Anna James, who is also a booktuber. I think she's called A Case for Books. I will link her down below. I've really enjoyed her videos for a long time. So when I found out that she had a book coming out, I was obviously excited. Also, this is like the book for book lovers. So much so that it has book pages on the hardcover. I mean, what more do you need? So this is a middle grade book which follows a girl called Tilly, and she works in a bookshop with her grandparents, and at one point she starts to realise that strange characters are popping up, and her grandparents are kind of shifty about who they are. And one day she bumps into a real life version of Anne of Green Gables, and things kind of go from there. It's a magical story about getting lost in books, and it's just fantastic. It's got everything you need, and there are some such lovely pieces in here for anybody who loves books. I can honestly say if I had read this when I was a child, it would have been my absolute favourite. It's just so cozy, so fun. It's got so many references to classic books, and it's just lovely. And there's also a part in here where it talks about getting stuck in the end pages, and I just thought that was such a wonderful and magical idea. It's just so beautifully crafted. I have to say it took me a while to get into. I was probably about 50 pages in before I really started to love this, but as I say, that's probably more to do with circumstantial stuff than actually the book itself. But when I finally did manage to sit down and dedicate a few hours to it, I was absolutely enamoured, and I would really recommend this. And because I was having a pretty rough time, I thought I would pick up Bastard Out Carolina by Dorothy Allison. I've had this on my radar for a long time, and I've had it on my shelf for a while, but I've kind of been saving it for a rainy day because it was a book that I was kind of sure that I would love. So this is a book obviously based in Carolina, and it kind of looks, and it basically is a kind of family saga about this girl called Bone, or Ruth Ann, who, she's born a bastard, and at first we look at the struggle that her mum had to kind of rid her of that label, and how she did not succeed. And it kind of looks at the poverty that they live in, and also her mum's unfortunate choice of partners. It looks at abuse, and I suppose it looks at what makes us who we are, what makes us make the decisions that we do, how our surroundings and our experiences impact who we become, and how we judge morality. And it's a bleak book, but I kind of thought that was why I was going to love it, because I love a bleak southern story, and this is that. There are some incredibly graphic abuse scenes towards the end of this book, which were actually, strangely enough, my highlight of the book. I thought they were fantastically written, and they really just punched you in the gut. Ultimately, it's difficult because I gave this 4 stars and I really enjoyed it, and I think it's a fantastically written book. Ultimately, it was a bit of a letdown, purely because I had been so sure that this would be a 5-star and I would absolutely love it. The reason that it wasn't, and it was only 4 stars, is because Ultimately, I've read books that are along a very similar vein to this and have enjoyed them more. This is The Lonely Hunter by Carson McCullers, for example. If you've been around for a while, you will know that that is the book that stole my heart. It's one of my all-time favourites, and obviously that has the same kind of tone and the same southern themes. Also, I would say that this kind of reminded me in places, I suppose because of the abuse, and because Bone is not your typical victim. She's kind of trying to deal with abuse in a time where she's also becoming sexually aware, so it kind of leaves her very confused, and in that sense it reminded me of A Girl Is a Half-Formed Thing by Emma McBride, again a book that I read a long time ago and loved. So I think if I had read this possibly a few years ago or at a different time in my life, it may have impacted me more and I may have loved it more. But it was a well-written book and it had some beautiful themes in there, but it kind of fell flat in terms of what it was trying to say as a whole. I think it kind of meandered a lot, and there was kind of a sense of, what's the point? It is literally just looking at various experiences that this girl has, and there's no, not that I need a plot particularly, but you need something to tie a book together, and I kind of felt like that was lacking a little bit in here. Ultimately, I would still recommend it. I think if you like southern literature and if you like bleak, dark books that aren't afraid to go to dark places, then this is definitely for you. As I say, the ending scenes were really, really impactful, and I think if there had been more of that throughout the book, I would have been giving this a 5-star rating for sure. As I say, it was a solid 4, there was no denying that, but it wasn't quite what I hoped it would be for me, sadly. And then finally, I finished this half of the month with Crudio by Olivia Laing. This is Olivia Laing's first fiction book. She previously wrote books such as The Lonely City and A Trip to Echo Springs, I think it's called. When this came out, I went to watch Olivia Laing speak, and I'm really glad that I did actually, because I think I would have completely misinterpreted and misunderstood this novel if I hadn't done that, and I can understand why this would not be for everyone. It's not a typical novel. So basically, Olivia Laing has kind of used her experiences writing books like The Lonely City and looking at oddball artists of the past, and she's kind of used that to bring an oddball artist of the past into the present and throw her into a situation where she's living in a world where things like Trump are existing, and looking at how that character would have reacted. And the person that she's chosen for this is Kathy Acker, who I don't really know much about, but I think she was a kind of punky writer. I think she's been compared to people like William S. Burroughs. I have got some books of hers on my wish list now, but I have a feeling that they're not going to be that great. I think they're groundbreaking, but they're not particularly well-structured literature. But anyway, so Olivia Laing has been fascinated by Kathy Acker for a while, and she decided to use her as the main sort of crux of this novel. And I was worried about reading this because as excited as I was when I found out that Olivia Laing had fiction coming out, it's basically painted as a modern day sort of representation of the day-to-day political situation that was happening when she was writing this during 2017, obviously with Trump's inauguration and everything that happened after that. Olivia Laing was kind of a consciousness, sitting down and writing these things as they were happening, and then she put them together as a novel. She didn't originally intend them to be a novel, she was just trying to capture the feeling of the time, I suppose, and her publishers really liked it, and that is where Crudio was born. I have to say I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would, having listened to that summary, because I kind of stray away from books that are too in the moment. I think I learned that the hard way with Ali Smith's Winter and Autumn. I liked them, but they're completely forgettable books for me, especially Autumn. I couldn't tell you what that was about now, because I think the mistake with being too in the moment with a book is that it does become forgettable, because the moment becomes forgettable. At the time, you'd have no idea what's going to stick in the history books. You know, things that seem really big at the time are not necessarily going to stand the test of time. And I was worried that this would fall foul to that same thing. And it actually doesn't, because yes, there are moments in here where Kathy Acker is reflecting on the political situation and the way that it feels like everything is coming to an end, but it's not the crux of the novel. They're kind of sidelines that help us understand Kathy Acker's psyche at the time, but ultimately, for me anyway, I picked out that this is a book about Kathy Acker leading up to a marriage that she doesn't know that she's ready for, and she's kind of incapable of loving, I suppose, and incapable of giving herself to another person, and she's wondering what it means to be somebody's wife and what it means to have a husband and whether that's even something that she wants. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. It really took me by surprise because I didn't know that would be in there. As I say, this is not going to be for everybody, but there for me was some really beautiful writing. It's quite experimental, it's very stream of consciousness. It's also quite short. I mean, the writing is rather large, there's big margins, and it's not that big to begin with. So I read this in about 2 sittings, and I really enjoyed that. I think it helped you really stay in the headspace of Kathy Acker. I think this is really interesting and experimental, as I say, and I think it's different to anything else that's out there, really. And it really grabs you by the hand and just takes you on a journey, and I loved it. It was still only 4 stars for me, and as I say, I think a lot of people will dislike this book. But for me, there was enough intrigue in here, and also the fact that it's Olivia Lang's first fiction book. It's very well realised, very poetic, the language is very beautiful. You wouldn't think that this is somebody who hasn't written fiction in the past, and I have a feeling she's probably been writing a lot of fiction through her life to achieve this standard. I would recommend, if you're going to start with Olivia Lang, I would say you'd probably enjoy this more if you read The Lonely City first, because it kind of helps you to understand her thinking behind this novel. But yeah, I enjoyed it. So that's everything I got through this half of the month. As you can see, I haven't been reading a great deal, and I'm still kind of in a funny space with reading at the moment, but I'm getting there. Please let me know how your New Year's are going. Have you got off to a good reading start? And I will see you next time. Bye.